The last time I stood in my parents' house, it still smelled like lemon polish and old furnace air. Mom used to wipe down the baseboards every Saturday, no matter how brittle her hands had become. She said dust made a house look unloved. She'd been gone 4 days. Her funeral was small, just close family, and one neighbor who brought over a lemon pound cake no one touched. I stayed at a local inn 2 miles from the house I grew up in. I hadn't asked to stay with my family. I hadn't been invited. That morning I came by to help sort through Mom's things. My father, Frank Whitmore, was seated in his usual recliner reading a flyer for window replacements he'd never buy. He nodded at me but didn't speak. My sister Janet Lee, now since marrying Doug, was already in Mom's bedroom, arms elbow deep in drawers. She had a blue purse, Janet said without turning. You know the one. She always kept it under the dresser. It's gone. I didn't answer. I remembered that purse. Navy leather soft with age. Mom used to clutch it close like it held something irreplaceable, though she never said what was inside. Frank spoke next without looking up. You had the key to the back door last month, when you came to take her to the eye doctor. I gave it back before I left, I said quietly. Janet straightened face unreadable. She trusted you with it. That's fine. But we're just saying. If you came by after the funeral home took her and something happened to it, it's okay to say so now. I looked from her to Dad. He closed the pamphlet. I'm not accusing, he said, his voice flat. But she kept some of her jewelry in there. Sentimental things. She didn't wear much near the end, but she told your sister she put them away for safekeeping. Something in me pulled taut. I opened my mouth, then closed it. Janet folded her arms. I mean, it's just us. No police. We just want it back. There was silence. The kind that thickens in old houses where nothing moves unless someone forces it. I didn't take it, I said. Frank nodded slowly as if I'd confirmed what he feared. Or what he expected. Well, he said, clearing his throat. If it turns up, just bring it back. And maybe take a break from coming around, Janet added, her voice tighter. We all need space. I looked at them, both two people who shared my blood but not my doubt. The blue purse wasn't the only thing that had disappeared from that house. I left without another word. The next morning I returned to the house. I didn't want to, but I had to. I'd promised Mom I would help sort the photo boxes, the ones she kept labeled by year even as her memory began fraying at the edges. Frank was already at the kitchen table when I walked in, sipping coffee from a chipped mug with the Cincinnati Reds logo. His robe was open over a flannel shirt, mismatched socks on his feet. Sit, he said without looking up. I did. Janet came in a few minutes later carrying a yellow notepad and a Ziploc bag of receipts. She didn't greet me, just pulled out the chair across from mine and set her things down like she was preparing for a deposition. Frank cleared his throat. We talked last night. Your sister's been doing some checking. Janet nodded. Mom told me a few weeks before she passed that she was putting her valuables in the blue purse. She even mentioned some savings bonds. I blinked. Savings bonds. She didn't want them lying around, Janet went on. She said she felt safer keeping everything together, and the last person she saw alone was you. Frank folded his hands. We're not trying to make this ugly. But there's no sign of forced entry. No one else had the key. The house was locked. I said nothing. It wouldn't matter. Janet leaned forward, her voice soft but sharp. This isn't just about a purse. It's about trust. You weren't here when Mom's hip broke. You weren't here when she couldn't remember how to dial 911. I was. I sent money, I said. Money doesn't sit by someone's bedside at 3 a.m. when they don't know where they are. Frank raised a hand. Let's stay on topic. I am, Janet replied, eyes still on me. You weren't here. But now that Mom's gone here, you are showing up just in time to sort through her things. She let that sentence hang, like it was the conclusion I should have drawn for myself. My hands were still on the table, palms down. I could feel the wood grain pressing faintly into my skin. I don't want her arrested, Janet said, turning to Frank. But if she has the purse, we deserve to know. I looked at my father. His gaze met mine, but it didn't soften. We're not filing anything legal, but I agree. Bring it back if you took it. And It's probably best you leave afterward. It landed quiet. Not cruel, not loud. Just final. I pushed back my chair and stood. You think I stole from her? You're the only one who had access, Janet said. What else are we supposed to think? I opened my mouth, closed it, then nodded. All right. Janet blinked. So I don't have it, I said. She frowned. Then why I said I don't have it, I repeated. But I understand what you've decided. I turned toward the hallway, toward the front door I used to race through after school. Janet's voice followed me. We don't want drama, Sally. We just want the truth. I paused at the coat rack. That's what I want too, I said. I'm sorry you don't recognize it. I didn't cry on the drive back to the motel. I kept the radio off and my eyes on the road like that could keep the rest of me from unraveling. The room was cold. The wall heater made more noise than heat. I set my purse down, kicked off my shoes, and sat on the edge of the bed. For a while, I just stared at the floral comforter. It looked like something my mother would have picked out 20 years ago. I opened my suitcase, unzipped the inner pocket, and pulled out a small padded envelope. Inside was a flash drive and a faded receipt from Best Buy. The date was 7 weeks ago. Underneath it was a folded note in my mother's handwriting, slanted careful, a little shaky near the end. In case I forget where I put things again. Thank you for helping me feel safe. Mom. She hadn't wanted to install a camera at first, said it felt like spying, but the day I found her looking for her wedding ring in the freezer, she changed her mind. I'm starting to misplace things, she told me that afternoon. Or maybe someone else is moving them. I don't know anymore. But I want to know. I need to. So I bought a small indoor cam no bigger than a salt shaker. I set it on the top shelf of her bedroom hutch, angled toward the vanity and dresser. It blended in with her porcelain knickknacks. She smiled when I showed her the app, just in case she'd said. Now, in that motel room with the low humming heater, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop and opened the footage folder. Each file was time-stamped. I scrolled to the day after Mom passed, the day Janet said she came by just to sit in Mom's room one last time. I clicked. There she was, Janet. Dressed in a gray sweater, her hair pulled back, moving quickly like she had a list in her head. She opened drawers, pulled open the bottom dresser cabinet, paused. Then she lifted the blue purse. She didn't hesitate, just unzipped it, glanced inside, and tucked it into the large tote bag on her shoulder. A few seconds later, Frank appeared in the doorway. He stopped, looked at Janet, looked at the bag. He said nothing, didn't step forward, just watched for a second, then walked away. I watched the clip twice, and then I sat there, laptop warm on my legs, my mother's note still resting beside me. They hadn't just accused me. They had known exactly who took it. The next day, I didn't knock. The front door creaked the way it always had. The smell of brewed coffee and old carpet hit me like a childhood memory I never asked for. Frank was in his recliner again, a different mug in hand. This one said, Number 1. Grandpa, though he never used the title out loud. Janet was standing by the dining table, sorting envelopes into piles. She looked up. Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't speak. I walked in quietly, holding the laptop under one arm, a black cord trailing from my pocket like a thin leash. Frank lowered his cup. You're back. I won't stay long, I said. I set the laptop down on the dining table, same one where we used to carve pumpkins as kids, same one where Mom once burned a hole in the tablecloth with a candle, but pretended it had always been there. Janet crossed her arms. You came to confess. I opened the laptop. The screen blinked to life. No, I said. I came to show you something. I clicked the file, maximized the video, and stepped back. No introductions, no narration. Janet's voice cracked first. What is this? Frank leaned forward. The glow of the screen lit the deep lines under his eyes. He squinted, then stiffened. There it was. In crisp, silent grayscale. Janet entering the bedroom, opening drawers, finding the purse, taking it. Then Frank appearing, pausing, watching, and walking away. The video ended. The screen went black. The room didn't. Janet's arms dropped to her sides. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. She looked at Frank, then at me. She said I could have it. Janet said at last. Her voice was unsteady, like she couldn't decide whether to cry or explain. Back in the spring, when I took her to the doctor, she said, she didn't want you to have it. Frank didn't move. His face was unreadable. Janet took a breath. I didn't steal it. I assumed Mom told you. I stared at her. She didn't. Frank spoke then, low and slow. You had no right to film us. I turned to him. She asked me to. His brow furrowed. She said she was starting to forget things. She wanted help remembering. She didn't want anyone, including herself, to misplace something and not know what happened. That camera was for her peace of mind. Janet shook her head. You waited to show this. You let us walk right into it. No, I said. You ran into it. I just pressed play. She flinched like the words landed too close. Frank set his mug down carefully. What do you want, Sally? You got your little reveal. So what, now? I looked at him, then at her. Nothing, I said. I'm not here to get even. Janet exhaled a bitter laugh. Then why come at all? Because you accused me. Because you made me stand in the house where I grew up and call me a thief in front of the man who taught me to respect people's things. Because you wanted the truth until it wasn't convenient. I closed the laptop. The sound of the lid snapping shut was louder than I expected. Frank leaned back. Well, I guess it's all out now. I slid the laptop back into its sleeve. No, not all of it. Janet narrowed her eyes. What else is there? I met her stare. I'm not the one who should be asking that. Then I turned, walked toward the door, and left them in the silence they'd built together. 2 days passed. I didn't hear from either of them. I stayed in the motel, packed but unmoved. The suitcase sat zipped at the foot of the bed. I hadn't booked my flight yet. Not because I was waiting, but because I was finally in no hurry to go where no one expected me. On the third morning, I walked to the post office and mailed a small padded envelope. No return address, just 2 names typed in stiff font on the label, Janet Lee Frank Whitmore inside. I placed 3 things. First, a copy of Mom's note, the one she wrote in crooked cursive asking for the camera. Second, a photo I'd printed at the drugstore across from the motel, an image pulled from the video, frozen on the moment Janet held the purse open and looked inside. And third, a small handwritten line in my own hand. This was never about the purse. I kept the original note to myself. Because it wasn't just a request for help, it was trust given quietly. The kind that didn't need an audience. In the last weeks of her life, Mom didn't write many things down. But one morning before I left town, she'd handed me that folded scrap and said, "Keep this just in case someone ever doubts you were here for me." I had almost forgotten it was in my wallet. Later that evening, I checked my email. A single message waited from Janet. No subject line. Just a sentence, short and sour. You win. Enjoy what's left. There was no follow-up, no apology, no denial, and no response from Frank. Not even silence with weight, just absence flat and familiar. I didn't reply. Some things don't deserve an answer. 6 months later, I flew back to Ohio. Just for a day. The cemetery sat on a small hill above the main road where traffic sounded like wind passing through trees. I hadn't been back since the funeral. No one met me there. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. The grass had grown in around the new headstone. Margaret Maggie Whitmore, beloved mother. Quiet strength. 1941, 2023. I knelt beside her grave and placed a small bouquet of yellow freesia on the stone. Mom never liked roses, said they came with too much performance. From my coat pocket, I pulled out the flash drive. I'd wrapped it in soft cloth the way she used to wrap the Christmas ornaments that meant something. I set it gently at the base of the headstone. No box, no note. Just the thing itself, quiet, still containing everything they didn't want to see. You were right to be afraid, I said aloud. My voice didn't carry. It didn't need to. A few rows away, the plot next to hers was already marked. Reserved Frank Whitmore. The space was there, etched in stone, waiting for someone who'd never looked back once. I stood for a while, not in grief, but in gravity. There was nothing to forgive. and no one left to ask for it. When I turned to leave, the sun was just starting to sink behind the row of pine trees at the edge of the cemetery. I didn't stop by the house. I didn't need to. Back home in Arizona, I opened the laptop one last time, not out of anger, not even out of sadness, just a kind of unfinished ache that needed closing like a drawer left open too long. The file folder was still there. I clicked through the recordings until I found a clip I hadn't watched before, dated 3 days before Mom died. The camera caught her at her vanity. Morning light from the window. She was brushing her hair slow rhythmic like the motion itself helped her remember who she was. She didn't know the camera was recording audio that day, but then she looked toward it. Not directly at it, but near enough. And softly, like she was speaking to someone invisible, she said, "Sally, I hope this camera makes you feel better too. I'm sorry your sister makes you feel small. You were always the one who saw me." She kept brushing as if nothing had happened. I sat still for a long time. Then I closed the laptop. Carefully this time. I didn't press play to prove a point. I pressed it to survive. Sometimes it's not the accusation that hurts most. It's realizing how quickly the people who raised you can believe it. They don't ask what happened. They don't remember what you've done. They just look at you like a stranger who walked in too quietly. And even when the truth shows up undeniable, time-stamped silent as a video, still they don't apologize. They just look away. Not because they didn't know, but because deep down they did. Maybe that's what survival looks like for some of us. Not justice, not reunion. Just finally seeing it clearly and choosing not to stay in the room when the silence starts. I don't know if you've ever been called a thief in your own home. I don't know if you've ever held a letter that proved someone once trusted you more than they could say out loud. But if you have, if you've ever left quietly and knew that was the real ending, just leave a dot. That's all. Just a single period. I'll know what it means.